beauties of this Mongoose product, which is an N4 Mongoose product. ISM and for service management is also written in the same product, and Sightline and some other of the manufacturing packages that N4 is written in. But so we have four major industries that we are targeted towards, although there may be more: electrical, HVAC, plumbing, and building materials. And Shane has sent me a list of the people who have signed up, and I see most of you guys are in the electrical industry. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in as my electrical industry user. And again, keep in mind, each user may experience, different ways that their screens look and how they react and how they process forward on some of the job features. But overall, the processes are pretty much the same. So I'm going to go ahead and open up, and when you first open up the screen, it opens up into what we call the project manager, and you can see the tab across the top. In fact, there's only one tab, is the project manager. We set our default to open up with this screen. And this shows me panels that are involved. So this is all the different projects that are currently working for this user, or it could be a group of users, or it could be as the individual, right? So depending on how you set your filters up, you can actually filter out what people see, and then the user will be able to use their own filters. So on these projects, as I highlight on the different projects, you'll see that the screen on the right changes. And these are the three panels that are associated with the different projects. So if I'm at the Cobb County Schools, and just like any other web, you can make it smaller or larger, by rolling up your mouse up and down. And it is fully web-based, obviously. But you can see the Cobb County Schools has two quotes that are associated. One's a lighting quote, one's an equipment quote. They're both master quotes. A revision could be done on these quotes, and they may be, a -1, -2, followed by the quote number itself. So each actual quote type will get its own quote number. And you could have, different customers that also have different quote numbers as they come across. So you may have an all bidders customer, but you also may have one to ABC Contractor. Maybe he gets different pricing than the all bidders, which would be, your normal, out public type of quote that goes out. Below the quote panel is the job panel. And this is where orders are created, purchase orders are created. So once it becomes an actual job, you create a job header with all the information, shipping defaults, and then you actually import in whichever quote got bought. In this case, this lighting quote is what was awarded, as you can see up here. As I bring in other quotes, I may win both of these quotes into the same job for big construction, but I may have multiple customers for the same project of Cobb County Schools, right? So I may have a lighting contractor, and I may have an equipment contractor. So I could have multiple jobs within the same project. So that gives me the ability to run multiple profitability reports, or I could run it by the project itself. There may be different phases that you want to track as different jobs, right? So you have those kinds of options as you're building through this. The bottom panel are the bidders. So these are the people who actually bid the job. Perry Pocket at ABC Supply, there's their email address. They actually lost the job. They got a quote sent on 3/8/23. It was sent by LEEC, and that's when it was, and that was the quote that was sent. So I track every time a quote goes out and who it goes out to and how it goes out to them. And so I'm able to, know which, and you can see I can mark them as win or losses. And a lot of this stuff is happening behind the scenes. So there's not a lot of physical things that you have to change because there's triggers that happen. For instance, when a project gets created, it starts out as in process, or maybe you guys call it in design, right? And then the next trigger happens is when you create the quote. So it changes from in process to bidding, right? And then once it gets sent out, it changes to sent or follow-up or something like that. So you guys actually have the keys to determine which different phases that it rolls into as it starts to move around. So there's a few little tools that I just wanted to review over here. So again, I'm looking at the projects that this particular user can see. Now to filter these things out, you may want to go in here and use this, what we call filter in place. And from here, I can either look for one project, or maybe with wildcards, I might want to look at certain things, right? So I could do like asterisk TX would give me every job that is in Texas, right? So asterisk is the wild card. You can put it before or after or in between words, and it'll pull up every project that the location is in Texas, right? Or has those letters somewhere in there, right? I can also say, I also want to do a filter in place where CBB is the salesperson, right? Another filter in place. So now I'm looking at only projects that have Texas in the location that are CBB. Or maybe I want to look at only the ones that are bidding within a certain date. Or I want to see the ones that are in a certain status or certain type of project or estimator or engineer, or however I want to filter these out. And you can actually set these filters as templates. So you may have 2 or 3 different templates that you set up to filter these things out. And then you can set yourself as a default template. So when I sign in, I only see the jobs that I want to see. You know, maybe I am a person who's doing quotes, right? So I may never book the job or actually take the order, but I only want to see quoting jobs, right? So I can see the ones that are in certain status. So once they are marked as 1, they get removed from my list, right? So I'm only looking at ones that are active that I'm bidding on, or if they get marked a lost, I may also lose the ones that are doing that also. So I can pick and choose what I see when I load up this different project. It also hooks into, we have a calendar, which is, in this case, it's a bid calendar, and it shows all the bids that this current salesperson can see. So if he's in, if you look on 5.2, there should be 3 Mile High Tacos, and there it is. And from here on this bid calendar, they can drill right into the project itself. It'll filter down the project to whatever it is. You can see the quotes that are out there, the jobs that are out there, and any of the bidders that are out there and who won them and how they got awarded, right? So I can clear out that filter and open it wide up again. And now I'm looking at everyone that I choose to filter by. So in this particular case, my user is only going to see electrical type of projects. So depending on how I have that set, right? So I can look at this by the day, I can look at it by the week, I can look at it by times. If I decided I want to put times on these bids, I could do it that way also and be able to drill into each one of them. We've also got the ability to put KPIs out here. So, you know, in this particular case, if I click on my dashboard KPIs, it just does a fly-in window with some KPIs on the quotes that are out there. I can see I have 2 quotes on this project, and I have no jobs yet. So once those get created, I'll have a, you know, profit loss type of KPI over here for that job. Now, these can be put anywhere within the system. In this case, you know, we've got a fly-in window that shows it on the project. But you may want to have something like this on the job header, or maybe you want to have, you know, a place where you can see, you know, what's been billed so far and what's left to be billed and what's left to be costed and that kind of thing through a job, or things that haven't been released yet, right? So you can track those things with KPIs, or again, we can do exception reporting or build reports that will do the same type of thing. So again, that's just a demonstration of how we can build KPIs within this Mongoose tool. We talked a little bit about calendars. We also have documents, and our document system is hooked to SharePoint. So when you create a project, in fact, if I'm in this World Trade Center and I click on the documents, it takes me to the PJM SharePoint site for the World Trade Center 12, and it creates these folders, or as many folders as I want to create, with subfolders inside of them. And then you could even have documents that sit inside of those subfolders. So every time a new project is created, PJM actually goes and creates this filing system out there for you for these projects. So at any time, I can look at all the projects that are out there, you know, whether I'm in PJM or I'm on my phone or I'm on my anywhere I want to go, and I can pull up, you know, the plans or anything else about these projects that I need to see. I can also share from this screen. So if I wanted to share submittals type of thing, I could do that from here. All right, so and that's really just takes you straight out to SharePoint. Let me go back into Project Job Management. So let's talk about the 3 steps, right? So the first step is we create a project. So if you think of a project almost like a CRM, so a lot of folks, by the way, use CRM for job management, right? So this is not a marketing tool, CRM. It's not even a CRM at all, but it has a lot of the same features that a CRM has without all the bells and whistles that may come with a CRM that you don't necessarily need when you're building these. So the project, again, as an opportunity, right? That's where it all starts. And within a project, let's just open up this project, this World Trade Center 12. This gives us basic information that I fill out when I create the project, and I determine what's mandatory and what's not mandatory. And the red asterisks give me those facts, you know, whether I need them or I don't need them, right? So things like salesperson or estimators or engineers, and all of these fields can actually be relabeled, moved around, put in different orders as you're building them. In fact, as a designer, I can open up this design tool, and I can either open it up as a user, or I can open up as a site default, or I can do a group of users. So I may have, you know, maybe electric group that I want to look at as I'm building. In this case, I'll open it up as a user page, and then I can pick, you know, which user it is. And then from here, I can, and just again to show you the availability that's out there, right? So here's all the tools where you can add fields. You can move fields around. If I wanted to move this over here, I could. Or if I wanted to relabel it, I could click on the label and relabel the caption to something else, right? So I can make all kinds of changes. I can make defaults in the grid that comes over here. So there's a lot of functionality that Infor Mongoose allows us to have as we're building these different pieces of it. So back to the project manager. So again, we can see the different fields that are available, and I've added budget and addendums. And this is, I'm looking at vanilla pretty much on when we're building these. So this comes with the system, and we'll tweak it as we go. And again, each industry, I've been able to do a lot of different tweaks, and we pretty much run the same way. Then I have vendors I can list, right? So I've got the GE vendors, and I have Lithonia. I've got different contacts, so I've got owners and architects and general contractors and engineers, and these can actually port into CloudSuite or into SX when I'm building the job. So this is just a starting point. Here's the physical address of the job if I have it. Here's plan information. So I might have an I square foot number or a Dodge number that I want to put in there, what the status is and what the plan is. So all these fields that I'm filling in become defaults when I'm creating projects or when I'm creating quotes and jobs. So this is the starting point. Again, if you think of it like the opportunity, this is where it all starts. These are the bidders that are in here, and you can see that I've got Chris Sharp at DPI, and he's set to get his quote by fax. He's old school, right? And Finecraft Building gets theirs by printing. And I might want to change it, right? So maybe I want to do not print at all. Maybe Finecraft keeps calling me to be put on all these bids that I send out every week, but they never buy anything from me. So I can put them on this bid list and don't necessarily send anything to them. There's my general contractor. I can also mark them as a win-loss. So if Kilroy Flemings calls me from JJ Whispers and said, you know what, I don't want to be part of this bid anymore, so go ahead and take me off. So I could delete it, right? I could just hover over here and delete the bidder, but I don't necessarily want to lose the fact that Kilroy was part of this quote at one point, right? So I'm going to mark him as a lost, and now he won't get any more quotes and he won't be part of the bid list anymore. But at the same time, I have him as part of it. So if I want to run some analysis on how many times JJ Whispers Kilroy is part of my bid group, but and I win the bid or I lose the bid, right? So I can track that kind of information. I can do things also like maybe I lost the bid, right? So I've got my project status of bidding. Maybe I mark it as a lost, but then I find out that Finecraft Margaret actually won the bid. So now, even though I lost the bid, I'm marking Margaret as a win. So now I can track winning contractors, right? Who's actually out there winning stuff. And I could make a note out there on why she won that bid, right? So from here, I can make notes on at the system note for the contact, or I can make the system note at the bid level itself, at the whole project, right? So, or the quote or the job. So there's a lot of different feature functionality that I can do. So I'm going to turn off these wins and losses just so we can follow through the process, because again, there's a lot of different statuses that happen as we're building these things. So in this case, we're actually bidding this quote because I've already started the quote. And I can get to documents from here also, right? It takes me to that same place, and it shows me the different documents that are out there, including plans and anything else I want on it. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that, and we're going to go walk over to the quoting side of it. So I have two quotes. I have 334-0 and I have 335-0. One's a lighting and one's a switchgear quote. So they're two different quotes. They do have their own status as they move forward, right? So again, same kind of triggers. When things happen, it can automatically change those. But at the same time, I can manually change them. Maybe it goes on hold, or I need to get an engineer approval, or I need the plans to change before I do anything else. Or maybe I want to alert everyone that's saying that it's ready to send out now, right? So I can mark these quotes as different statuses as I'm going through it. So there's any field that's in the quote header is available to put in this grid. And you can move these grids around as you need to. Maybe you want to put, the type over here and you want to shorten this guy up again. And this is only doing it for you, right? So if I wanted to, I could use my design tool and make it a permanent fix for everyone, and then they change it from there. You'll notice there's add buttons, there's delete buttons. We can lock these out where only certain people can use the buttons. So you may only want supervisors to be able to delete a quote. And then there's action buttons, like I can print a quote from here. I can skip the whole job side of it and award it straight to the ERP. So now if I do that, I lose all the not necessarily trackability, because I still get tracking from it, but I don't necessarily get all the information that I would from a job. And we'll talk about that as we go through. I do have the ability to do RFQs here, so I can send a quote out to my vendors in an Excel spreadsheet. My vendors can fill it in, or maybe they send me something and I fill it in for them, and then I can import those Excel spreadsheets into the job. I can also import in from Excel, so I can, or different formats that your vendors may give you some of your quotes from. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate that here in a few seconds. And then we have what we call data views, and this is just a reporting tool that Mongoose comes with, and I love it because it's really a beautiful tool that is an SQL database type of reporting, where you can just, in this case, it's hooked to whatever quote that I'm hooked on. So if I'm hooked on this lighting quote and I click on data view, it opens up a data view report. And from here, I can drill into that report and I can see all the lines that are in that report. And this, I can do all kinds of stuff from here, right? I can go in, I can move things around. I can filter out on this report. I can create templates out of this. I can send it to Excel, or I can send it to a PDF. I can write expressions. So maybe I want to add one column plus another column minus another column. I can do all kinds of fun things with the reporting side of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that too as we get towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that lighting quote. I'm going to edit that quote so we can see what makes up the quote. So again, I have pre-built these. I've got the category is sort of like a tier of a quote. So there's 3 tiers. There's a category tier, there's a group tier, and then there's an item tier. So categories will roll up all the items and groups into them. So if I had like a lighting quotation, and then maybe I have a second lighting quotation for alternate bid, right? So I could create a second category at the bottom of this quote that would have the alternate stuff that could go along with it. And I can change the descriptions. I can do flush down margins for it. So in this case, I'm running a 23.13% margin. I could flush that down to an even 22% and flush it all the way down to each item as long as I have cost in there. Now, I don't necessarily have to have cost, and I want to talk about that too as we're starting to build this up. But in this case, in a perfect world, I have cost, and I have pretty much everything that I need to have on each one of these items, right? I have an item number, I have a type, I have a manufacturer, I have the description, I even have a vendor who I buy this particular equipment in. And again, unless it has a red asterisk, I don't have to have it, right? So I don't have to have a vendor. I don't have to have a full-blown description. I can actually bring in extended descriptions that will print on the quotes too, and you'll see in the switchgear side of it, we've done some quite extensive with coloring things and making things bold and making it larger fonts and some real Word document type of things as I'm starting to build these. But again, I want to start out simple. So each one of these have a quantity and a cost, and they all roll up into this category. Now, if I go down to this group, you can see this is a lot of Lithonia, and I probably don't want to put the word cost in there. I just want to put it as just a lot of Lithonia. And it's going to have items that are associated with that group. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to give them a bulk number for the items that are listed underneath it. Now you'll notice on my group, I can choose to print those items or not print the items on the quote. So I may not want to break it out for them, right? So I can turn that off. I can turn off quantities. I can print the manufacturer or not print the manufacturer. And I can print pricing on each one of those items or not print the pricing on each one of the items, right? So I have options as I'm building these. Same thing with category, right? So I can print price, don't print price. In this case, I've got pricing in here on each one of these items. They roll up. So I'm going to show my customer the extended pricing. So let's go ahead and print a quote to see how that looks. So I'll print on the print button. So I may have multiple layouts, right? So your switchgear people might look a little different from your lighting folks. So you can have multiple layouts as you're going through it. I'm going to use the one that makes the most sense here. I could send a scope out, which would be the entire quote without any pricing at all. I can use different headers. On this case, I've got a header letter that comes across, and I could have different templates that I want to pull in, but as a default, I'm going to use the Republic quote header. And from here, I can click on this pencil and make edits if I need to. So if I wanted to, make this 60 days instead of 30 days, I can do that kind of thing. Or maybe I even can put shortcuts right into, wherever they need to go to get the backup information about this quote as they're starting to take a look at it. So I really like the fact that you can put shortcuts straight in here. You can change font. Maybe you want this to be red or something to really stick out when you print it on the quote. You can do that kind of thing. Maybe you want to bold it or a different font size, right? So maybe I want to add a bigger font size and I want to change that to a bold, right? So every one of these little screens that have the ability to go into this Word type editor, you can use as you're building these guys. So in this case, I'm just gonna preview it. So I'll hit the preview button. Now, when the quote actually goes out and I pick the bidders that it's going to go out to, it replaces the name you'll see on this quote. It'll come from with the all bidder quote. But when it goes out to the actual bidders on the quote, it will fill in the company's name that the quote's going out to, and it'll fill out the contact that it belongs to. So again, I think it's the first time I mentioned the fact that we use contacts. Sorry, it doesn't usually take this long. The problem is that I'm not running this every day and all the time, so it may drag a little bit. Once the engine gets running, these reports print really quick. So here you can see the quotation. There's the information I had. Here's the different lot that I had out there for the $8,000. These are the items that I want inside of it. I can have signature lines, the same kind of thing if I want to make those changes to it. Here's my terms and conditions page if I wanted to have a terms and conditions. And again, I can pick those as I need to, right? So you may have different formats that you want to go out with those. So on this case, maybe I don't want to print all that pricing on all of these, and I just want to put a grand total at the bottom. So I'll take off all this pricing, and I'll hit the print button again. But this time I want to change the format, and I don't necessarily want it to, do eaches and all that stuff. So I'm just going to have it where I've got my default format here. Where is my default format? There it is. And I'll go ahead and print that out. All right, so if I'm ready to send the quote out, we'll let that load up for a second. So once I'm ready to send out that quote, you can see this is a different way of looking at the quote. So it gives my eaches and my type next to it, followed by the quotation or the description of it, right? And then I don't necessarily want to put pricing on each one of the lines, and I just put a grand total of the section, right? So I may have a total for the section, and then another total for the alternates that go along with it. And then you have a grand total at the bottom, and again, followed by the signature page, followed by the terms and conditions. And you can do page breaks wherever you need them. Maybe you want, building number 1 on one page, building number 2 on a second page, and do that kind of fancy footwork. So when I'm ready to send it out, I'll hit the print button again. And this time I'm going to hit print project, and this now allows me to go ahead and print it to the people or email it to the people that I'm going to send it to, right? So once I do that, send it out again, you'll see that this will open up in a PDF, and you'll see that JJ Whisper will now be on the header of that quote filled in. And then we can also bring over the salesperson who owns that bidder, right? Whoever owns JJ Whispers, or who even owns the contact. So there's JJ Whisper, Kilroy Flemings, right? So, and then at the bottom, it's saying who prepared it. And again, these are all replacement fields on what these pull in when they fill in, right? We can also do the same thing with different notes and header notes as we're building these things. So once the quote goes out, I may want to make a revision, so I can hit the plus button here. So once I send the quote out, I can't change the quote anymore. But when I create a revision, I can recalculate costs based on the current costs that are in the ERP, or I don't have to, right? So if I want to keep it where it is, and this is a question that as the management team, you can decide whether you're going to do or not. Right, so you can make it default to that. So you can say, why you're creating the revision as you're building it. And now we have a second revision, revision number 1, as we're building this quote. Right, so if I go out of this quote, you'll see that there is now a lighting 0 and now a lighting revision number 1. Now I didn't make any changes to that, and you'll notice that this one's in follow-up because I actually sent it out. And we should be able to see, let me see, I might need to refresh. Yeah, so you can now see that electric sent it out 334-0 on this date. So that's who got that quote as it went out. So I haven't sent out the in process one yet, right? So I just basically created it. But again, I can do some flush down stuff with this, right? So I can open this guy back up, and I can, flush it down to a 20% gross margin, and then flush it all down, and then resend it out. And again, it tracks the fact that I sent it out as I go. Okay, so lots of functionality here. You guys have got to pick out what works best for you. So let's go ahead and get into the job side of it. It might take a second for it to flush down because it's recalculating each one of these lines based on that gross margin. And sometimes you may not have cost in here, and I did want to show you that you can create a lump cost and a lump price and roll it down. All right, so I'm going to go out of this guy, and now you can see my pricing has changed. So let's go into my job panel, and I'm going to click on the add button. So ring, 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 phone call comes in, and actually that first lighting quote got bought. So from here, I'm going to actually pick who the contractor is, and I'm going to use my B&H Construction. And here's where I pick a contact for that contractor. So this is the project manager for B&H Construction, right? Who am I going to notify when things ship or what's going on with the job? So I'll go ahead and pull in Billy. I may want to pick what kind of job this is, and any one of these drop downs are all determined by you. Now, some of them are pulling from CloudSuite or SX. For instance, the customer is pulling from CloudSuite or SX. The contact is actually pulling from CloudSuite or SX, but you can also add to the contact file, and it writes back to CloudSuite or SX as you're building it. So I'm going to make this a plan and spec. I'm going to tab over. The salesperson came over from whoever owns B&H Construction. I can make a change if I need to. The warehouse that I came from pulls over. If I need to change it, maybe the guy at Erie actually won the job. So I'm going to change the initiating warehouse to Erie, but I'll keep this one at demo. The create date came over, so that's sort of like the booking date. So I have booking reports that we can run on when things are booked and how much was booked on these certain dates. The start date is when I'm expecting it to actually start happening, right? So for management, I may want to know when the money is going to start flowing in. So if this is not going to be actually started for another 6 months, I may want to push that start date out. The close date happens when the accounting department closes it, and then you have customer PO number. So I'll put in a PO number and how much was awarded. And then I'm going to put in some kind of amount that I think it's going to cost. Now, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is I'm going to balance out what my purchase orders that I got from my customer was to what actually I billed my customer, or the same thing with cost. If I'm expecting it to be $135,000 and at the end of the day, it turned out to be $180,000, what happened? What did I lose? Where did I lose it? Right, so this is where I do the original purchase order or the primary. Over here, I can do additional purchase orders as they give them to me. So if they give me another purchase order, I can put in another dollar amount. So maybe there's another $5,000 that they're going to give me, and I'm expecting a $3,000 cost on it, and it's for some ad lights on second phase, or per Jimmy or something like that. All right, so it's just tracking what happens. You can make it a change order. You can mark it as a temporary order. Maybe you think that purchase order is going to change as you go through, so you can mark that as appropriate. And you'll notice at the bottom, as I'm highlighted on these purchase orders, it tells me how much they're worth, and they'll also show me how much has been released against it. And then once we've got releases against it, we'll know how much we have left to release against each one of these as we're building them. All right, so back in my header, again, I put in the basic information. This is now asking me for an address, and it does work with Avalara, so if you are using Avalara, it will work. And then I'll put in the city. Now the taxing information came straight from B&H, but if I need to change it to something else, I can mark it. If this is and again, you can give security to whoever has it. I can mark that as non-taxable. I do have to have a reason why it's non-taxable and a certificate and maybe even an expiration date. So you can fill in this kind of information and then come in with an expiration date on that particular certificate. And again, you can take that certificate and drag it into those document files that we talked about a little earlier so the accounting department can get to it, or you can just let the accounting department handle it at that point, right? It's really up to you on how each company handles it. Now, once I hit the save button on this, it is actually going to create a ship to NSX CloudSuite. And the ship to number is going to be 22897501, and it's going to be titled World Trade Center 12. So the hook between SX and CloudSuite and PJM is what's going to determine what's in this job, right? So whether I create an order from PJM and push it to CloudSuite, or I'm in CloudSuite and somebody walks in the back and adds an order to it and uses the World Trade Center ship to, it creates the line and the order into the job so I can maintain trackability in the job, you know, no matter which end it came in from. So they write and talk back and forth. So once I hit save on that, it goes out and it runs an API call out to CloudSuite. It creates the job. If I actually go back to the job panel, you'll see now that there's now a ship to number that got created. And then this World Trade Center is out here. Here's my customer purchase orders. My contacts, like my engineer, my owner, my general contractor, these also wrote over. They pulled in from the project, which we saw earlier, but they also write into CloudSuite. And then we have the orders. Once I start creating them, these will start to fill out along with the accounts receivable. So I'm back in my detail, and you'll notice that there's no lines here. So I don't have to have a quote to do an order, right? I can start from scratch and import in, or I can import from a quote or import from a job, or I can start straight from scratch and do a category with the items that go inside of it, right? But in this case, I do have a quote, so I'm going to go pull up the quotes, and then I'm going to pick the quote that I want. In this case, it's going to be World Trade Center 34, revision number 0. And here's where I can pick and choose what I want and what I don't want. So if I don't want this group, I can turn off the group with those items and only bring over these items. So I'll import these in, and now they become part of the job. Now, in this case, I can also, I have the ability to have commissions where I can have splits within the system. And I know a lot of the electrical folks don't use it, but the HVAC and plumbing guys do this a lot, where you may want to split it between 4 or 5 different salespeople. And again, we can turn this off if you do all your commissions in SX, or we can do it in PJM. It's a very robust commission system, so you may want to look at it. I just wanted to bring it up to show it. But in this case, I'm just going to take the default, and I'm going to give 100% of the job to one salesperson. But again, I could have given it to multiple people that are actually bidding this job. So I brought in the category, all the items rolled up into that category for my extended price, my extended cost. You'll notice that nothing has been released yet and nothing has been billed yet. As things start to bill and things are released, it'll show me what's been released and what's left to release and what's left to bill as I build this job out. All right, so I'm going to go into the releases. And from here, I'm going to create my first release. So on my release is where I determine of this job, what do I want to release? So I can release it all by clicking the category, and it pretty much gives me the option to release everything that's in that category, or I can turn on off whatever I want to release or what I don't want to release. And then once I do that, let's say I didn't want to release these couple items. So I can turn these guys off. Or maybe I wanted to release them in 2 different releases, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and release these like they are. So I'm gonna award that out. And this basically takes me to the page on how do I want this to go to SX or CloudSuite, right? Do I want it as a sales order? Do I want it as a blanket order or a lump sum, right? In this case, I'm going to use it as a sales order. I could do third-party billing. So currently it's going to bill B&H Construction, but if I turn on third-party billing, maybe I want to bill the owner, or I want to build a different, maybe a subcontractor that's doing part of this job. So I can still maintain everything within this job, but have different customers that are related to it. The customer purchase order came over as the default. I could pick a different one if I needed to for the add-ons, but I'll stay with what I have. The due date, the ship to comes over as the West Street. If I choose a different ship to that customer uses, it doesn't change the ship to number, but it allows me to bring in the actual address from a different ship to that I may use for my customer, like the shop address or something like that. Or I can just go in and override what's ever in there now. I can put a freight cost in here. I can put a promise dates, freight, whether it be FFA or FOB. This override address is for if you're using Avalara. And then you can put, shipping instructions that all this stuff writes over to CloudSuite. So it prints on the PO and prints on the sales orders if I needed to. So maybe a call 24 hours ahead and give a number and who they're supposed to call. And then I'll go ahead and award it. So now depending on what kind of order this was, so each line can be a direct ship or it can be something coming out of your warehouse. Now in this case, I had them marked. If I go back to my detail page, I had these items marked as a non-direct ship, which means they're going to ship to my warehouse, but I did have it to include sourcing, which means it created a purchase order for each one of the vendors that these items were assigned to, right? So if I go back to my release page, you can see that the sales orders will start to populate as I start pulling this in, and then the purchase order number that it was released to. So I might need a second here for it to all populate. So now they're all populated, and you can see there's multiple purchase order numbers that were created. So I can either print one purchase order number at a time, or I can print all of them, right? So I can decide what I want to print. So I'll go ahead and just print GE for right now. And and now we have the ability to change the purchase order look and feel from what CloudSuite does. So it's really just taking the same data that CloudSuite and SX has and just allows me to manipulate it and change it however I want, right? For only job POs. That PO number is still the same. The stage is still the same. The instructions and the descriptions are all still the same, right? But we can make manipulations to the actual form itself if you need it to work differently. Now, what we have found out is if you use PJM to create the purchase order, the status of the purchase order in CloudSuite stays as being created and not necessarily being sent out to the vendor, which means I can make changes within PJM and it will write back and then update that purchase order as needed, right? So if I'm in this and I find out that, a cost or a sell price, I need to change it on here, I can just drill right into the item itself and make, maybe a description change, or maybe I'm going to change the how many I'm going to order, right? I can make those kinds of changes. I can change my unit price. Maybe on this, I'm going to make this $50 instead of $41. It recalculates, and you'll notice that the original price versus what the price is now is different. So I know what was initially pulled in, and I always know what happened at first, right? So then I'll update the sales order, and that will now go and update 5569 in CloudSuite SX with those new numbers and new quantities and new descriptions as I need to for non-stocks or whatever. Right, so in that detail page, I can continue adding more things to it, or I can release more things to it as I need to. Okay, so I did want to show you one feature that I believe is pretty important here, where we may want to do a split on a line that's out there. So if I wanted to go to my detail page and let's say, actually, let me get out of this. Before we go too deep into that, I do want to show you some of the reporting that can be done from this job. So we've released a few things right so far. So I have the ability to do a job summary report, and I have a customer job summary report, and then I have a draw report that will actually send out a report to my customer. And we just added this new feature on this last release for submittals, so I can go in and create submittals out here. This is probably a bad example. Let me get one that I've already done. Florida Medical Center. I've created a couple submittals out here. Here's the Lithonia submittal, and there's multiple layers of that submittal with documents that go along with it, right? And these are just PDFs that go along with it. And then I can go out and I can email out the submittal itself, put notes into it as I need to, and I just email it out. And then from there, it creates a submittal for me, sends it out to my customer or whoever I choose to send it out to. Maybe I want to send it out to the engineer or estimator or whatever. And it creates an email that looks like this, where it's got Florida Medical Center submittals, who it went out to, who CC'd on it. Then I can open up the transmittal report, and this goes out and shows the transmittal date and the number. And then it's got some boxes and some remarks that go along with it. Right, so this is sort of like a cover page that goes out with it. But it also creates these binders. And in these binders, this is a combined binder for my Lithonia submittal. I can open this up, or I could drill into each binder as needed to. Right, so it creates a cover page, creates who the customer is, who the engineering firm is, and then it creates a stamp sheet page and then shortcuts to these different binders that I've created out there. So there's a first lighting floor, and then there's my stamp page as I'm building it, and then there's my my first submittal that goes out, that goes along with it, right? So, and all these are being stored in my, let me go back to where I was, inside of my documents. So it creates a submittal folder with all the different submittal documents. So in the same place in the SharePoint site, I have all the submittals that are related to what I sent out. So those shortcuts, what you saw, will actually just take them straight to this page and give them and basically share the PDF, and again, allow to download it or not download it, but not be able to change it, type of thing. All right, so I hit a lot of stuff, and we're running out of time real fast. So I'm going to open it up here. So Shane, are you there? Did we have any questions that came across? Can you guys hear me?
Hi, Clint. Yeah, I can hear you. I had an issue there getting on mute. I don't see any questions through the chat. I can open it up. Okay, I've opened it up. If anyone in the audience has any questions for Clint.
Wow, no questions, huh?
No questions.
I think that may be the first time ever that I've had no questions. Was I that good?
I think so. If for some reason there are any follow-up questions, you can send them in to me. I can get them over to Clint. We can do follow-up calls, deeper dive discussions, whatever it may be. But this was, I've seen this a few times now recently, and I'm impressed every time we jump into it, Clint. So thank you for taking the time. Is there anything you want to close on, or you want to try and wrap it up now?
Well, I do want to just hit real quick on some of this reporting that's out here. So we talked a little bit about reports, and under the data view setups, again, all these are canned reports that we supply for you, but you can modify them as you need to. So we took a look at the quote report, but there's a bid list by salesperson report. And these are all the different tiers that report goes into, right? It looks at project details, which is the bidders. It looks at the salesperson on it. It looks at the project header, and then it looks at the contact, and then the quote header, and then the customer, right? So there's different areas that it goes to, and it's really easy to go in here and add whatever fields you need to add to this report. So in this case, the only thing I'm looking for in the salesperson side of it is I wanted their full name to show up, not just their code. So I was able to add them as a tier, and you'll notice that it's a single level tier, and some of the reports have multiple levels where it drills down to different sides. So let's go ahead and run this report real quick. And again, you can give this same kind of filtering that we did earlier. We can run it by date range. We'll just run it wide open. And this is going to show all of the projects that are out there that are bidding currently. Now I've got it run automatically to sort by salesperson. So if I look in Casey's sort, I can see all the customers that are assigned to Casey and the bid dates that were on the quotes that she had sent out. And it looks like they bid $321,000 based on the time zone that I told them to do when I built it, right? But I can also do things like, you know, currently I'm looking at it by salesperson, but if I wanted to look at it just one big giant flat file, I could do that. And then maybe I want to look at it by customer, right? So now I can take customer, drill it up, and drill into each one of the customers, right? So now I can see by customer how much I've bid that customer. Or I may want to look at it by salesperson and customer, right? So then I can take the salesperson right here and then pull customer name after that. And now I'm looking at it by salesperson, by customer, or by customer. And then each one of the customers show all the bids that went out and then the dollar amount for each one. So it's a really, I mean, I love the way that the reporting works on this. And the same thing with, let's look at a job status report so you can get a good idea on what we can do with these. And we'll end with this. So a job status report, again, I'm only really looking at three tiers here: the job header, the job releases, and then the job details. So from here, I'm going to launch it. And again, I'm going to launch it wide open. And then in this case, I've got it where it's a tiered type of report, right? So I'm looking at each one of the job headers at the first tier, but then I can drill into each job and I can see all the lines that are in the job. I can see their cost, their price, what's been released, what's been billed, the customer purchase order number that's related to each one, what the sales order number is, what the purchase order number is, what the stage of each one of them is. And I didn't get into this, but I can, you know, pull in carriers and manufacturer's order number and, you know, pro numbers or anything else that we need to be able to track. And then, you know, send this out to your customers if you choose to, or send it, you know, internally. You know, all these can be modified to make, you know, customer facing reports as well as, you know, salesperson facing reports or sales manager facing reports, all kinds of great things that we can do, because it's as easy as copying the data views and relabeling it and then making whatever changes you want to in it. So that is it with 2 minutes to spare. One more time asking for questions. Other than that, I would love to do some one-on-one demonstrations to anybody who's interested in seeing it. We can go a little deeper into the, you know, how these things are done. I mean, I didn't even talk about splitting orders. So you may have a lump sum that went out and, you know, half of it ships today, half of it ships tomorrow. You know, we can actually split those lines within PJM, which writes it back to CloudSuite with those numbers. And we do integrate with ISM. So if you have a service department out there, we can handle the service side of it also and create service tickets from PJM.
Great. Well, thank you, Clint. Thank you, everyone that joined today. As we shared at the beginning, this is an ongoing webinar series that Central Data provides. I want to thank Clint today for joining us. Great demonstration of project job management. We will be sharing this out with everyone that attended today. And if there are any follow-up questions, we'll get you back in touch with Clint and we can dive a little bit deeper into the platform. So thank you everyone again today for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks again, Shane. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.